Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of the WION Voice of America Co-production. I'm Molly Gambhir. US President-elect Joe Biden is expected to swiftly reverse some of President Donald Trump's most contentious immigration policies when he takes office. What will the Biden administration's immigration policy look like? Voice of America's immigration reporter Alain Barros looks at Biden's plan to act on policies affecting refugees and asylum seekers.
Travel bans, restricting the asylum and refugee systems, family separations, pushing to abolish DACA. These are some of President Donald Trump's immigration policies. The president-elect Joe Biden has promised to reverse. Analysts say the incoming president will likely issue executive orders to overturn these policies.
All of the things that President Trump did unilaterally, they can do unilaterally as well, or they can undo unilaterally. So, for example, the travel ban, I would expect to be vacated almost immediately. The refugee cap, I think, will be changed immediately. That's something that's clearly in the president's power to do.
President Trump's efforts to end DACA or the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals sparked large protests during his 4 years in office. The Obama-era program shields from deportation people brought illegally to the United States as minors. Trump said the program amounts to illegal amnesty, but promised to help DACA recipients if Congress acted.
I have a love for these people, and hopefully now Congress will be able to help them and do it properly.
But Congress did not act, and DACA's fate became embroiled in the courts. Proponents of President Trump's immigration policies say the changes were needed.
What the Trump administration tried to do is get back to our original intent, congressional intent, when Congress set up many of these programs. And I think that is overall the focus that the administration had in making many of the changes.
As for the refugee program, which under the Trump administration, admissions reached a record low, Biden has pledged to raise the refugee cap to 125,000. Alain Barros, VOA News, Washington.
And for more on the immigration policy of the incoming Biden administration, we have with us Voice of America's Nova Poivodi from Washington, D.C. Hi, Nova. The focus domestically in the U.S. has been on undocumented immigrants. But is the incoming administration likely to roll back some of President Trump's policies on legal immigration?
Yes, as you said, the focus internally, domestically in the U.S. is usually on the 11 million or so undocumented immigrants, and also DACA recipients, or those who are deferred from deportation because they were brought to the U.S. illegally as children. But legal immigration is also something that, of course, is on the agenda of President-elect Joe Biden's incoming administration. Now, there are two paths primarily for citizenship to the U.S. Via naturalization. One is employment-based, where an employer sponsors you, and one is family-based. Now, every year, over 1 million, usually around 1.2 million people receive what's called a permanent resident card, or colloquially known as green cards, and a vast majority of that, 700,000 or so, or 800,000 or so within a given year, are usually family-based. So someone sponsors their spouse, their mother, their sibling, their children. This has been derided as chain migration by its detractors, including the Trump administration and several Republican senators, which several times have tried to have legislation that would limit that to, let's say, only parents who need medical attention, Molly. So there is a concerted effort among conservative senators to perhaps limit or even bring down the number of legal immigration to half, because they consider this to be chain migration as opposed to family-based migration. But the Biden administration, the incoming Biden administration, President-elect Biden has said that he will focus and prioritize on family-based immigration. He doesn't believe in separating families, and many Democrats are of this opinion as well. This is one aspect that is probably not reported extensively internally, but among immigrant communities, it is something that raises concern if they're going to try and limit legal immigration routes by family. Now, this got a new this had gained some momentum in 2017 when 2 terror attacks were committed, one by someone who was in the U.S. via a family-based immigration who had a visa from a family-based immigration route, and then another who came here by the so-called visa lottery, the diversity visa, which is handed out to up to 50,000 people every year. Now, of course, these are only 2 people compared to 800,000 or so which receive family-based visas, and also 50,000 or so who receive the green card lottery every year. So there's always this push and pull about skilled migrants versus non-skilled migrants, Molly, and the incoming Biden administration will be more amenable perhaps to family-based migration, not considering it chain migration, but a centuries-long tradition of Americans coming to the U.S. to pursue the American dream and then to bring their family members to the U.S. as well. So it's not something that's uncharacteristic of Americans, but this has been how America has always been, Molly.
Indeed. So as far as skills-based immigration is concerned, there will be a series of changes, like you're saying, in granting H-1B visas as well, something that the Trump administration has restricted?
Yes, in late June, this was during the height of the economic collapse due to the pandemic, where tens of millions of Americans lost their jobs. President Trump signed an executive order basically freezing all legal immigration routes, especially through employment. This included, of course, the H-1B visas, which the Trump administration has always been rather critical of. Later on in the year, the administration also enacted several restrictions as to qualifications and also the pay scale of people who are qualified to get the H-1B visas. Now, several Democrats and also people in Silicon Valley have called on the incoming Biden administration to first unfreeze H-1Bs and also deal with H-4 visas, which are visas given to the spouses or children of H-1B visa holders. The H-1B visa holder, I know, is very popular in India. Most of the recipients actually are from India, aside from China and other countries. But the H-1B visa, of course, allows work in the U.S. for up to 6 years, and usually employers can switch from the H-1B to a green card if they choose so. And so this is one of the routes to naturalization for a lot of Indian Americans and Chinese Americans. And as we mentioned in our story earlier, this was frozen by executive order, so it would likely be rescinded or resumed by executive order as well by the incoming President Biden, but also for a more comprehensive legislation reforming immigration in terms of caps and also legal immigration and also family-based. You have to work with Congress, you have to work with the Senate, and that all hinges on whether the 2 Georgia runoffs will result in a Democratic majority, which means Joe Biden will have more leeway to have immigration reform on his terms with a friendlier Senate under Democratic control, whereas right now it's under Republican control, opposition Republican control, Molly.
Indeed, and the other challenge in the run-up to the Biden administration taking over is the vaccine rollout. 2 coronavirus vaccines have been approved for emergency use in the U.S. the latest from Moderna and a previously approved one from Pfizer. Because the first vaccine approved for for use in America needs to be transported in ultra-cold conditions using dry ice, this has led to some unique challenges. How is the US transporting its vaccines? What are the logistical issues involved in the vaccine rollout? Take a look.
Dry ice is the solid form of carbon dioxide, and it can be as cold as minus 78 degrees Celsius.
This is a pellet. This is what they're going to use. It is white, as you see. It is smoking. You can see that smoke come off of there. So that's dry.
Harry Game is the owner of Game & Sons, an Ohio company that has been producing dry ice for decades. He says demand for his product has risen 10 to 15% in recent weeks. That's because dry ice must be used to keep the Pfizer COVID vaccine in extremely cold temperatures during transportation, at minus 70 degrees Celsius. Pfizer transports its new vaccine in specially designed boxes. Each box needs a new supply of dry ice every 5 days.
One challenge is that the box cannot be opened very frequently. If you open the box, that dry ice would sublimate more quickly, right? Because the temperature gets warmer.
The other problem is high levels of carbon dioxide can be deadly, especially on board airplanes.
Planes are equipped to handle a certain amount of air exchange in the aircraft as it's flying. But you don't want to have so much on the aircraft that it would overpower that ability to replenish the oxygen levels in the aircraft.
Despite the rise in demand for dry ice, experts say there's plenty to go around.
So when we looked at the system, we're pretty confident that we can meet that capacity.
The only alternative to dry ice is special refrigerators with ultra-cold settings. Some hospitals and research centers in large cities have those. And companies that make these refrigerators say they're seeing a rise in demand as well.
We literally have added probably about 50% more people into our organization. And we went out and, bought $2-3 million worth of material so that we can actually get out in front of it. Now, the demand has clearly outstripped even what we thought was going to be our solution.
Other coronavirus vaccines are much less problematic. The Moderna vaccine can be transported in minus 20 degrees Celsius temperatures, which will make it much easier to transport to more remote areas. For Lisa Bokalets in Washington, Anna Rice, VOA News.
Going back across to Nova. Nova, 2 vaccines approved for emergency use. How long before we could see the U.S. being able to turn the tide against the pandemic? Even while Donald Trump has been praising the rollout progress so far, millions of those vaccines have been lying unused in American hospitals. As per the latest figures, 9.5 million doses yet to be administered. Only 1 million have been used so far.
Well, yes, this is the rollout has been swift and fast and furious, but of course, it is a logistical. It's huge logistically. The Moderna vaccine has only been started to be rolled out this week, whereas the previous week it was the Pfizer one. This week it was interesting because President-elect Biden opted to be inoculated by the Pfizer vaccine, whereas the prominent member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, Dr. Anthony Fauci, was injected with the Moderna vaccine. These vaccines require 2 doses, 3 weeks apart for the Pfizer vaccine and 4 weeks apart for the Moderna vaccine. The Centers for Disease Control estimates that by December there could be enough vaccines for 20 million people. That is roughly the same amount of people who need it most, according to the CDC's priority list, which is frontline healthcare workers, also assisted living, nursing home residents, and workers. So the rollout is happening, but there's hitches, as we can see, because nothing has been on this scale in terms of rollout of a vaccine. And unexpected 30 million more doses are expected in January. Of course, a lot of these doses would also be for second shots for those who already had their shots in December. The CDC merely gives guidelines. The individual states determine which groups of people receive the vaccine first. The CDC's guidelines so far is in phases. So phase 1A are the priority groups that I mentioned, nursing home residents and such. And phase 1B is going to be essential workers. Now, essential workers are determined by each state and each territory. But of course, you can expect these to be workers who cannot work from home, police officers, sanitation workers, grocery store workers and such. And then there's going to be phase 1C, which is most other essential workers, and they're thinking about things like restaurant workers and such, so that the economy can start to open again, and there's a rebound in the economy, and also in the general pandemic itself. Now, they are expecting by June that anyone who wants the vaccine can get it, but some people are saying maybe by the fall, by September or October. But at least by the middle of next year, there may be hopefully some normality. But of course, it's going to be a tough 6 months ahead, Molly.
Noah, thanks very much for joining us with those perspectives, leaving it there for the moment. With that, it's a wrap on this co-production edition of WION Voice of America. Shifting focus now to Niger. It is the world's poorest country by a key UN benchmark. It is now hoping to make history on Sunday in its presidential election. The Sahel country is aiming for its first ever peaceful transition of power. But the issues regarding Islamist insurgency and extreme poverty levels continue to threaten peace in the region. Will the country be able to achieve a peaceful transition in the presidential vote? Our next report tells you more.
Niger is set to make history on Sunday. The Sahel nation will be electing a president, and it is hoping for its first ever peaceful transition of power. The country is battling economic wars and an Islamist insurgency, and has never had two elected leaders hand over power since independence from France 60 years ago. In fact, the last coup was only a decade ago. Despite hopes for peace and calm, violence threatens to spoil this rosy picture. In Diffa, for instance, which is a large city in southeastern Niger, a threat of jihadist group Boko Haram and its many dissidents looms large. Poverty is another hurdle. Niger is the world's poorest country by a key UN benchmark.
Life here in Diffa is not easy. We live in insecurity, we don't have jobs, the climate is deteriorating, livestock farming, agriculture, trade, it's not going well. Because all along the Komadugu-Yobe, where we grow crops, where we raise livestock, where we trade with our neighboring countries Nigeria, Cameroon and Chad, it's no longer possible.
Another flaw in this peaceful transition is the lack of opposition. Poor governance has led to increased armed violence in the region as well, as jihadists from neighboring Mali and Nigeria unleash terror. According to the UN, last year more than 250 people died, and there were more than 250 kidnappings in the region.
There is no food, there is no money. If we take out loans, we have trouble repaying them.
Even though President Mahamadou Issoufou has announced that he will peacefully hand over the reins to a successor, critics are skeptical. They worry about the dominant army, which in 2010 forced out a popular president eyeing a third term. Around 42% of the population last year lived on under $1.9. The poverty-stricken people of Niger are hungry for change. Whether Sunday's vote will deliver this change remains to be seen. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Christmas is here, and it's not just the decorations that are sparkling. The face mask has also got a festive twist. This accessory, the most used one this year, is now being used as a Christmas gift. Take a look.
That's cute. I think it makes a super easy stocking stuffer. I think it's a quick and easy thing to add to a larger Christmas present as a whole. So at Wolf & Badger, we definitely encourage people to shop small and think about supporting local businesses. We ourselves represent over 1,000 independent fashion designers, and 81 of those have created their own face masks. In the beginning of the pandemic, there was super limited options available, just very PPE, cut and dry. Everyone was wearing the same thing. Now there's definitely been an expansion, and there's a myriad of very fashionable face masks available. A lot of the designers kind of use offcuts of their fabrics to create really trend-led face masks and designs, and they're also available in premium fabrics too. So with that, it kind of expands the price points, so consumers can kind of pick and choose how they would like to express their individuality.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.